with more voters registered this time around, how can this affect the voting process?
Well, let's talk once again with Attorney Carlo Africa Policy Consultant of Lente. Now, back to you, Attorney. Okay, so we had been discussing this. What's your take on that? No, I mean, we also had PPCRV's Myla Villanueva actually exactly saying that, probably 80%.
Yep.
So these are not joy registrants, as you might think, you know, because it was very difficult to register during COVID for these new people. Diba?
That's true.
So it's actually when you register, you might as well go vote. Is that your take as well?
You have to commiserate with Danie, Laurel, ladies and gentlemen, because it took her 2 hours to file her absentee vote.
Oh, well.
Okay, so
For me,
Attorney.
two things. Before I go to voting, let's not undersell the power or the influence of our television news media, because actually in a survey conducted, the #1 source for young people is television news media. 54% of them said actually they get information about their candidates from the news. So it's you play a very big part when it comes to info dissemination for our country. When it comes to registered voters, I think what might be a better comparison would be the 2016 elections, because in the country it's very different when you have candidates running for president. Historically, you have a higher voter turnout during the presidential years. No, so back in 2016 we had 81.5% as a voter turnout. So we'd probably have I'm thinking we'd probably have a higher turnout this year despite COVID, just because one of the things that we've noticed over this election is that you see more people actually becoming more partisan. And even maybe I've talked to some members of our other co-election watchdogs, and we've been having a little bit more of a difficult time recruiting more people to become non-partisan, because young people have been saying that they feel like this election matters to them, and they want to be partisan this year. And just because of those are volunteers, and I'm sure on election day they know the value of this election and they will turn out.
Is that possible, Carlo? Because I mean, you know, even as journalists, I've received 1 or 2 messages. You know, apparently media is no longer neutral, and I'm like, I'm in the opinion section. You expect me to be neutral, you know? But going back to what you're saying, is it still possible to find people who are neutral, non-partisan, especially in the Philippines?
I'm sure it's very difficult. Us ourselves, what we do is we have standards, and that's how we actually try to be neutral. And we base our standards on international practice or international law and international rights. This is really the basis of our framework, which we call ATIN or SATIN for these elections. We want elections to be safe, accountable, transparent, and inclusive. Because if we have all of those 4 elements, we'll have confidence in the electoral process. And we base that on international law. So that's whenever we have issues thrown at us, we always try to go back to those standards to make sure that we can be as neutral as possible. But it's very difficult.
Very hard. Historically, what happens to the undecided voters, that percentage? I think there was an estimate, something like 20% soft voters. Either you don't know who you're voting or you just don't want to vote. What normally happens, and what's your expectation this year?
So to be honest, I don't have the data behind it. But I would think on election day, we still have a lot of voters choosing or ending up deciding on election day. So even right now, we'll have voters who may be undecided last night have a more clear direction of where they want to vote when they're facing the ballot.
But do you see less of them now? Because nga you mentioned it's very partisan, very polarizing. Meron pa talagang bang undecided dyan?
So what we've noticed would be probably we have an earlier time when it comes to partisanship. So usually you'd see people become partisan around February. But for this election, it seems like there was an earlier conversion rate. We've seen people be very clear on their stands back in December. But as to how many people are still neutral, I'm not really sure. But what is clear is that more people are actually going out and participating in campaigning on their own.
Has Lente seen, sensed, or suspected any of the tactics, strategy, playbooks that were adopted in foreign countries being used in the Philippines? Because we've often referred to, this campaign system of Donald Trump, the hate campaign, the colors,
Populism campaigns.
populism, etc. Has Lente seen that on the ground here in the Philippines?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that we have seen it just because they actually copied from us. The Philippines has
Tayo
actually
pala
been
yan.
ground zero for all of
Trump.
these
We
for all
don't
of these
copy
attacks,
Trump.
right? Even social media entities have identified the Philippines as one of the priority areas because they do understand and they do realize
Wow.
that Philippines was used as the first potential testing spot for all of these tactics. And the fact that it's happened before, I'm sure it's still happening now, and we've also seen that. But we do have to credit some of our social media entities. They've been trying to lessen the influence of these tactics. However, the problem is we're always catching up. Our candidates are very innovative. They're very, they think outside of the box. So, for example, back in 2016, we see a lot more posts when it comes to, fake news or attacks. But with this election, we've noticed that more and more these posts have become pictures or memes or videos, which is harder to catch, especially for social media entities with algorithms. So they have to teach their algorithms how to catch these new types of posts. So the problem, I guess, with us is we're always trying to catch up. We're never up ahead because it's very hard to be as innovative as someone, I guess, as invested and as resource heavy as some of our candidates.
So just to are there any legalities towards this hate speech, hate campaigns, or is that just part of democracy, part of freedom of speech? You can post whatever you want. There's no issues on libel of defamation that go on during elections.
So interestingly, some entities would say that we are actually behind on freedom of speech just because we have libel and we have cyber libel.
Ah, wow, okay.
But it's really part of the context, and I think in the context of the country, it might be necessary to still have those, provisions.
Safeguards.
But at least specifically for fake news or for misinformation and disinformation. But to be honest, I haven't dealt with libel because it's such a heavy topic, and it does not just with elections, but beyond elections. It's hard to have a very electoral point of view only on the topic of libel and cyber libel and freedom of speech.
What about, Carlo, what about troll farms? Because I know that one of your collaborators, Professor Ong,
Yes.
he had done a study on troll farms, the life of a troll, etc. And in my interview with him, he shared that contrary to popular belief that these are just young individuals out to make sideline, troll farms in the Philippines are actually set up, managed,
Bigger
generated
machinery.
by PR, public relations firm, advertising agency, etc.
Interesting.
This revelation, will it lead to, you believe, more Comelec control, etc.? Because as Danie pointed out, the hate speech, it doesn't have to be vulgar, but it can still be hate.
So actually, this was a project of ours back in 2019, and one of the specific provisions we put out during that time would be recommending to Comelec to have for political parties or candidates to register their official Facebook or website or social media account, just so that these will be the accounts who can actually buy boosts or ads on Facebook, which will really
Kasi you can
heighten
pay
or
for
make
it. You can pay for it.
Anyone
now.
can see that. But so we did that, and what we've seen this year is that lesser Facebook groups or lesser Facebook groups who have troll-like actions actually get to boost their posts. But at the same time, we've seen there's been a shift that we're not seeing these trolls or these Facebook pages actually use boosted ads. What they've done is they've shifted towards influencers and micro-influencers, and they've really gone through a different setup because they found out in 2019 that this is how Comelec would be regulating them. So again, they've innovated.
Is this under election spending?
It should be. It should be, yes.
And how monitored is that?
It's hard to
That's
monitor.
millions.
I think the
just
problem
for-
in the country is we only have one requirement for our candidates, and that's to submit their statement of contributions and expenditures 30 days after the elections. But I'm not sure if who actually gets to read that?
You know, I'm laughing because I'm just reminded of several people who will be laughing all the way to the bank after the. Is there no
Eto.
law that because in other countries, if you have an excess of campaign funds and contributions, my impression is you're supposed to give it back or
To the donors?
to the donors or
Okay.
something. I do know of
You
one.
don't keep it.
You don't keep it. Now, what's the situation with that? You were
What's the
talking about
legal
camp-
situation
so
there?
I guess I have to separate them for contributions and expenditures. For expenditures, it's clear. If you overspend, you can be disqualified, and it is an election offense, subject to the
Okay.
1 to 6 year penalty.
And there have been candidates who were disqualified from running for public
Yes,
office
yes.
because
For
of that.
overspending.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's been decided to the Supreme Court, so it is valid law right now. For contributions, we do not have limits. And what happens is that you can actually get
More than the-
more than what you can spend.
Okay.
But what is required from you is you have to declare this as taxes, as income tax, if you do not return it to whoever gave it to you. But again, it
Sorry,
will
all
depend-
the excess amount
Yes,
should
on
be
the
a tax
excess,
on
yes.
the excess amount.
on the excess amount that was, or any amount
Wait,
that was
that's
not
an
used.
income to you.
That was not used. So even if it's in excess of the spending limit,
Tama,
but you
yeah.
spent below the spending limit, any excess of what you did not spend should
Okay.
be taxable
Taxable.
income. Yes.
But the rest you can keep.
The rest you supposedly spent already.
Yeah, okay.
But there is no law or rule that requires you to publicly, kumbaga sa law, di ba, you're supposed to advertise in a newspaper of general circulation that, I made 100 million peso profit from the last campaign. Is there such a law?
Well, we do have a law. I guess the law is a statement on contributions and expenditures. But again, the people don't know about it. People don't actually get to see all of these statements of contributions, expenditures, and supposedly, if there is an excess, you have to you can check whether or not this person paid with a BAR. And actually, even right now,
That's
the
all you
Comelec
can do,
Finance
tax
Office,
it, eh.
they've been in coordination. They've been in coordination with the BAR. But what we're calling on Comelec, let's be more transparent. Let's show it out. Let's have people audit these statement of contributions and expenditures.